Father Lawrence, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you, Raphael, for inviting me.
It is a pleasure, and I'm very humble that you're here. And Father, I usually ask our guests to just give us a brief background in terms of their coming to the faith, and then we can take the conversation from there if that's okay with you.
Sure, sure. I'm the son of an Orthodox priest. Um, didn't really grow up in a parish. My father was a chaplain in the Air Force, Father Michael Margitich. He ended his priesthood here at this parish. I was choir director here from 1985, and he came out to retire, and then the priest we had left to go back to where he had been from. And my father, Father Michael, took over. And during that period, I became a deacon, then I became a priest. I grew up in the Orthodox Church, as they say, not in a normal parish situation, but I always liked going to church. It was just something in my DNA, I suppose. My grandfather was a chanter from the old country. My dad's brother was a priest in Canada. Another brother was a deacon in Pennsylvania. Another brother was a choir director. So it was, I don't know, it just seemed very natural and not natural to become a priest, but natural to go to church.
Mm,
Our family was simply Orthodox.
I see. So you do have a bit of a different background from most of my guests, because most of my guests came from a different, religious background and came into Orthodoxy. So I think your perspective on this is going to be very valuable because I often wonder what's the usually Orthodox churches for me was very fascinating because there's a lot of kids and there's kind of kids doing the most. What's usually the considered the best way to like discipline your children? I mean that in a broader sense, also within the church, but just in the broader Orthodox, is that what's usually, what's recommended when your kids are misbehaving?
Misbehaving where? That's the key, right?
Hmm.
Misbehaving at home, misbehaving in the church, misbehaving in the grocery store,
Hmm.
misbehaving at school. I mean, all that misbehaving shows, I suppose, a rather a loose connection with discipline. Um,
Hmm.
oh, it's a big question. My that's probably a better question for my wife to answer because while in church, I was either directing choir or serving as a deacon or serving as a priest. Never took care of my kids in church. I mean, I would see them in there. And then I have two boys and a girl. The two boys would serve in the altar. Now they're singers. One is a deacon. So uh, it's important. What's important with bringing up children is, from what I can see, is that each child has more than their parents to lean on. I don't know where I heard this from or if I made it up, but I think every kid needs at least five different adult people in his or her life besides the mom and dad,
Hmm.
godparents, uh, 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 pious friends in the parish, normal people, respectable people that the kids would like. And this, in our case, it was my parents, their grandparents were always around, and that gave them sort of this buffer zone where I mean, they were kids are kids, but they always had somebody else to look at that was respectable and loving and devout in the church, uh, besides mom and dad.
Um, what's um what's usually the approach towards like spanking your children? Is there room for that in the
That,
Orthodox faith? You think does it have its
there,
place in raising
yeah,
children?
there's room in a limited age range, and
Hmm.
it can never be out of anger, and it can't be hard. You know, you can't take a belt and whack a kid with it.
Right.
A parent that disciplines in anger is disciplining in a way that is just going to communicate to the child that anger is a good way to manage your feelings
Hmm.
and get things done your way you want. So discipline can't be in anger, but limited spanking, sure. I mean, we did it, not a lot, but we did it. Less with girls in our case. I don't know why, although they present their own challenges,
Hmm.
especially when they become 13 and past.
Right. Yeah, because one of the things that I've seen a lot in reading the Old Testament is this like relationship between the father and the son, and sort of this I don't know if it's reverence, if it's the right way. So I see it, for example, in like Abraham and Isaac and so on. There's this very special connection that the son has with the father. Um, how would you? I guess what's the right relationship? Let me start with that.
Well,
That a father should have
if
with his son.
it's about being authentic as a human being. If you're
Hmm.
fake, if you are dysfunctional, if you are religious on the outside, but you have no inner spiritual life, your heart isn't really right with God, kids are going to sense this. If you have an anger problem, an addiction, drinking problem, if you argue with your wife, any of these things are going to communicate to the son, to the children, a dysfunction, and you're going to pass that on. We have to strive to be calm, loving, you know, authentic,
Hmm.
and just who we are in public or in private. That's what they saw with my father and my mom. Like they were who they were, just in public or private. There was no kind of fake facade mask, and that takes a lot of work. When you're a young parent, you're working on that. You're discovering who you are. The children really help you discover that because they cure you of your selfishness. Um, if you really love them,
What do you think so many people nowadays are pushing parenthood so far ahead? And usually the excuse is like, well, the economy, well, I want to live a little bit more, you know. But do you
I
think
see.
that's healthy to do, or do you think it's
You mean
sort of
less that we're
consensual?
like we have two kids, that's enough, or
Well,
we're not
that
ready.
that, but also people are waiting much more to have children. I mean, I know friends of mine that are 35 and are still kind of on the fence.
They're waiting to get married often.
Hmm.
I mean, right? People aren't getting married in their 20s as much. I mean, we've had some success here as far as that goes. They're fearful about the economy. They fear that they haven't grown up, or they fear that their own careers are going to be uh, uh, just, come off the rails. That's a really good question. I don't know. I would only have some anecdotal thoughts about it. I don't know what sociological studies would show on that topic. I'm sure there's a lot of work done on that topic.
Hmm. And what would be your suggestion to people that maybe, maybe they're married but they're still, really hesitant about having children? And again, most of the times what I hear is, when people are married, it's usually career or finances, right? And my answer is
Yeah,
usually like the kids kind of push you to make the finances anyway, right? So that's just my perspective. And also I think a lot of the people that I've spoken to, is usually the women actually that don't want to have children just because, again, because of their career. Um, so do you think that's, as far as
that's
I understand, that
probably
kind of
true.
goes contrary to the Orthodox view, right?
Yeah, it's probably true. Um, we've had a couple of weddings this year in which the couples are like, we can't wait to have a family and lots of kids.
Hmm.
Uh, the husband has a decent job in both cases. But I think about my own grandparents. They had 10 kids on my father's
Well.
side, and my mom's side, I think they had eight. And it wasn't like they were educated, you
Hmm.
know? They worked in the mines, they worked in shops, they worked blue collar jobs, and it was the Depression. So different forces at work now. It's a different world, different society.
Hmm.
People, I don't know. We moved out here in 1985 into Santa Rosa to be choir director. My son was 6 months old. I came out, I knew I'd have to find a job. I knew there was an apartment for me at the church and a very small honorarium per month, like $200. And I've been here now 42 years, but looking back, a couple of years ago. I was talking about this. I said to my wife, "We must have been crazy. A 6 month old, not a regular, moving far from parents." And she said, "We weren't crazy. We trusted in God."
Mm,
And I think that's what it comes down to with children too. You know,
mhm.
I mean, she was right. She trusted probably way more than I did, but that's her. She's more mature that way.
Yeah, like in my case, for example, I've got 3 of them, right? And I'm still pretty young. I'm barely 31. And we had them back to back, and it's very difficult. 3 small kids running around. It's very difficult. And I think,
But let me interrupt you for a sec.
sure.
It's way more difficult after you turn 40
Oh, I can imagine. I can
because you don't
imagine.
have the energy. It's
Right.
it's a young person's, young family's task. I know some older parents, they had kids when they were in their 40s now, or even a little bit later. They they are, they have one child. Everything is poured into that one kid.
Hmm.
So the child can become either spoiled or the parents become overly concerned because
Hmm.
their whole future's in this child.
Right.
And they just have a hard time. I hate to say they're bad parents, but they're they get a little wound they get wound up. Nobody I know personally here, just for the record.
Hmm. What's an advice that you would have for a young couple that just had their first kid and they're kind of like me, kind of figuring out what do you do with this thing? I don't really know how to
You're
raise it
struggling.
properly. Hmm.
Yeah, you're struggling. Learn as much as you can uh, from your elders. Ask a lot of questions for those that are older than you that have had some success. What do I mean by success? Well, their children are not dysfunctional. Their children love the parents. Parents love the children. Ask those people how they did it, what circumstances they were in when they had their first kid. It is hard, and you work really hard. But the Father's glory is to get that crown in the kingdom of heaven, and uh, you're gonna wear yourself out doing it. But that's the job, and it's okay. God supplies God supplies everything you need, the grace, the help. Things come out of nowhere for help all the time that you would not expect it. Again, it goes to trusting God, a lot of prayer at home together, but separately on your own. Teaching the kids to pray at home, not long, drawn out prayers, but just what they can handle. I go to people that have just done it right. No, I have three, but I have a family with 5 kids, and they seem to all be very well adjusted, and they all love church. So I would go to them. I'd say, you know, talk to this couple. What do you guys do every night? How do you work your mornings? What do you get your kids involved in? Too many sports? Certainly don't do sports on Sunday, please.
When it comes down to prayer, um, as like for example, like my channel's 95% men. So I'll gear that question towards them as a man with children or as a man with a wife. How much of your prayer should be divided between like what you pray with your family? I know that's not an exact science, but the prayer that you do with your family, your children, your wife, and the prayer that you do individually. Which one do you think is I don't know, maybe not most important, but which one should, us as men and head of the household should we prioritize?
You should be praying by yourself mostly,
Hmm.
but there should be a time to pray with your family, certainly before meals. Prayer after the meal is lovely. I was visiting a family. We ate. The oldest girl, what is she, 12, 13, got up at the end of the meal and she said the prayer after dinner. Uh, and the longer version of it, just totally by memory, which tells me they did that every night. Uh, they did some of the evening prayers together, not terribly long, and they did some morning prayers together, but they would pray the pre-communion prayers together for sure. Some of them, a couple. Everybody's different. Every kid, can handle something different. Not every kid's going to stand there like some kind of Russian child with his hands at his side.
Hmm. And my kids are half Russian, and they don't stand. They don't stand like that. They can't.
Yeah, yeah.
They can't put up
But
with it too
I,
long.
I was in church last week, and there was a kid lying in the middle of the floor in the church, and I said to one of the guys that grew up going to the Russian church, I said, yeah, I guess you would have never seen that in a Russian church. He goes, no, they would have dragged me out of there by my foot
Hmm.
if I didn't get up.
Right.
So just a different way nowadays.
Hmm. And what's your
And I'm not
perspective
going to
on
yell
that?
at parents. I'm not going to yell
Hmm.
at parents during a service. It's just not seemly. And I don't
Hmm.
want to embarrass and humiliate anybody. And I don't know
Hmm.
what the circumstance is. So,
Right. Right.
one has to take it somewhat easy on that score.
And what's your take on that in terms of like the rigidness of the worship? Do you think it's more rigid, less rigid? What I mean, again, no right or wrong answer here, but um, I feel like too rigid kind of takes away from the reason that you're there, but
Yeah,
maybe too lackadaisical may also not be paying respect, right? So like, is there like a
that's
balance? You
correct.
think?
Yeah, you got to find the balance. There's always a way to do it. Other parents, grandparents, godparents, friends can help. That's got to be key.
Mm.
And we were out there doing an Akathist, and some kid was like, you could see he was getting ramped up. He was ready to run around one of the columns. And I just called him over and I said, hold my hand. And I let him hold my book. And he just sat there. I mean, I could have wagged my finger at him. I could have yelled at his parents or whatever, but I thought that's not going to. Inside of me, it was like, you got to do something. Oh, this is so irritating. But that wasn't going to work. And he was totally fine.
Mm.
But parents need help in church. They really do.
No, I agree. I mean, especially us going with three kids, it's usually I usually have like one kid in one arm and the kid in the other arm. So it's
That's
like
right.
it
And you
can get a
hand
little
off another
tiring.
kid to a godparent or a
Hmm.
dear friend.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they grow up close to that person too.
Yeah. There's this idea that I see a lot online that sort of this like the fact that people are having less and less children, that divorce rates are so high. Um,
Yeah,
the perspective is that a lot of this is systemic. I would love to get your view on that.
boy.
Especially on divorce. I mean, I certainly see that there is a component that may be systemic, but like I'm really trying to understand like that where do we stand with that? I mean, is there you think a conscious effort to separate the family, and if so, why?
Well, one of the ways to break down the church from the evil one is certainly to break down the family because the family is a small church. And it seems to me I saw an article, maybe it was in First Things or uh, one of those magazines. The title was "Is Divorce Contagious?" Or maybe it was someplace else. I don't know. And I wonder about that. A lot of social things are a little bit contagious, and that might be one of them. Um, no fault, you know. I don't know. This sociological stuff, I'm not really qualified to talk about. But you look at it and you wonder. Like your question is good, actually. I just don't know.
Well, let me ask you a more practical question. So, obviously in any relationship, there's going to be disagreements, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
big, sometimes small. Um, what do you do? I mean, from a spiritual perspective, when there is that disagreement in terms of, for example, like maybe we should live here versus maybe we should raise our children that way. Like how do you come to those disagreements without allowing like your will to be the primary motivator of that conflict?
Well, depends when those disagreements happen. If they happen early on in the marriage, it means the marriage preparation was not so good. because big questions like that ought to be dealt with before you get married. You discuss this with your marriage prep counselor, your priest, whatever you've got going. But if they come up later, after some years, options come up, you have to submit it to prayer. Hopefully, you would bring it to your priest before it escalates into this hard and fast. Like, this won't work. We're not doing it. Or this is the way it's going to be. I mean, you're a team, 100% in, husband and wife. I mean, sure, the husband needs to show some leadership here, absolutely. But that's it. Leadership is not about forcing other people to do his will.
Hmm.
Leadership is
Right.
determining what is the right thing to do in this circumstance with God's blessing.
Hmm.
Yeah, bring it to your priest. Go to confession. Don't be ashamed to bring it up
Hmm.
because you're worried it looks like your marriage is weak. If that's
Hmm.
your worry, then your marriage will become weakened
Right.
over time because you're not dealing with issues and things will escalate. You'll get out of control quickly.
Hmm.
Yeah, you gotta just talk about it. You gotta sit down and talk about it with somebody you both trust. Get some good advice.
Hmm. Yeah, because, like, for example, one of the things that I see a lot, is that, when guys get married, we want to have our position in our household, right? And what happens on the other side of the spectrum is that I see that guys will do everything their wife wants them to do because they want her to be happy, at sometimes the sacrifice of their own, like, vision, or their own understanding of how something should be done, right? And that also creates an issue, because then I've seen that maybe the wife will resent them because they didn't take the right leadership, as you mentioned. Um, so, like, I guess, to what extent do you think, as the husband, you should do what you can see is the right path, even though your wife may not always agree with it? Like, to what do you see what I'm trying to say? Like, to what extent should you maybe push a little bit when there's that disagreement, I guess?
Well, before I got married, when I was at seminary at St. Vladimir's, I asked Father Thomas Hopko for some pre-marriage advice. And he's like, well, what do you want to know? I'm like, I don't know what I want to know. I don't know what the questions are.
Hmm.
Can you tell me? He says, okay, I'll come up to your room after Vespers. So he pops up there, you know. He says, well, what do you want to know? Again, I said, I don't know. He said, okay, I'll tell you one thing. He says, don't argue with your wife about small things. Because if you do, you will lose the, what's the word he used? Like, the cachet of of goodwill and leadership. You will have squandered it away on all the little details. Because at some point there's going to come a point in your married life when there's an issue which you need to decide. And if you're always arguing about little stuff, you won't have any credibility
Yeah,
left. So that's really pretty awesome advice. Not that I
I
always
think
followed
so.
it, but it's there. I mean, it's something very, very important. You don't need to make every decision. You don't need to argue with everything you don't like. Why? You know. Besides, there's got to be communication so it doesn't get to that point where you're arguing about everything and this big decision comes up and you got to force it. If there's communication all along the way, then that's not going to happen. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but there'll be respect.
Right.
Yeah, you've got to respect. You've got to not just love your wife, you have to respect her. Most wives, often, not most, often, many, many wives are just more intelligent than their husbands. So we got to listen to them.
Yeah. I've heard it said that fatherhood is like an icon, or that marriage is an icon. What does that mean?
Well, Yes and no. It's not the exact way I'd put it. Um, Marriage is an image, word icon is image, of the kingdom of God. And
Hmm.
this is imparted in the marriage service, which is not just a blessing, because your parents bless you to get married, your friends may bless you to get married. You have a blessing to put on the rings at the betrothal part of the marriage service. But the couple comes into the church and stands before the gospel and the cross and the community, and they're not asked any questions. It's a sacramental uh, uh, event that's taking place. In other words, two are becoming one. Somehow their spiritual DNA is becoming united. And out of two is the one with Christ in the middle. And just as the bread and the wine are transfigured or changed into the body and blood, just as a man is changed at the ordination, something essential is happening within him, just as something happens within us, the absolution is given at confession. Christ imparts to us when we confess. So in the marriage service, something essential is happening between the two, and the image is that Christ became man, and his church is his bride. So the husband is, St. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5, which we read at the wedding service. We don't read the thing from Corinthians, love is, patient and all that. We don't do that. That's not about marriage. About marriage is that the husband is the image of Christ. Christ, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Wives, be obedient to your husband as the church is obedient to Christ. If the husband is truly the image of Christ, willing to die for his wife, loving his wife as Christ loves the church, because Christ doesn't yell at us, Christ guides us, Christ shepherds us, Christ forgives us, Christ rejoices with us, Christ weeps with us. If the husband is like that, then it's very easy to be obedient to that vision. But if the husband is dysfunctional and can't do any of those things, then how can a wife say, yeah, I'm obedient to that? Because that's nothing. So it is the kingdom of God. Marriage is the kingdom of God. Just like every sacrament is imparting the kingdom of God to us through some created means: water, bread, wine, the hands.
And so, is it fair to say that in order for a man to be fully actualized as a husband, he needs to imitate Christ in his own life, you think?
Yes, yes. And that will that happen all at once? Definitely not. You'll learn how to do it. Marriage is one of those things in which all the graces that you need this for transformation is given to you, but it's not perfected on the day you get married. It's perfected over the time that you're living together. Unlike, say, the Eucharist, which is perfected there on the altar. It's fully what it is. A marriage is fully, but it's not completely manifested yet. The couple has to grow into that calling. They may have every intention of doing it, and things don't work right for some reason. Uh, you know, it's myriad reasons. Often the husband fails, honestly.
Mm. And what about divorce? What's the Orthodox view of divorce?
It's like they're well, Christ is pretty clear, right? What he says about divorce. Says it was allowed to in the Old Testament only because of the hardness of their hearts. That divorce is not something. I mean, a man leaves his father and mother, is joined to his wife. The two become one. Let no man put asunder. Divorce is taking something apart that shouldn't be taken apart. Christ does not approve of it, except in terms of right adultery and that type of thing. However, the church has always been in this place of tension in the world where things have come in a couple have fallen apart. It is not a marriage. It is a sinful situation. It's broken. It's not going back together. You simply recognize that this is a bad situation. They need healing. Hopefully, both of them will come for healing. And that healing might take a while, but the church does allow a second marriage. But it has a repentant nature. The hymns aren't, the prayers aren't all kind of rejoicing and, you know, wheat, wine, and oil, and like children around, like olive shoots around your table, and all of that. It's a different vibe with the second marriage. Yeah, it's a
Um,
tragedy. The church
mhm.
will grant a second marriage. Some people say, does the church grant a divorce? Well, no, because divorce is a sin. Church doesn't like bless a sin. But if I sin in some way, the church recognizes my sin. I confess it, you know, and it helps me to do that, to move on.
Is it possible for a person that's not Orthodox or baptized Orthodox to marry a person that is Orthodox in the Orthodox Church, or would the person have to first convert, be a catechumen, get baptized, and then they would be allowed to get
It's
married?
better for both to be on the same page with their faith, equally yoked, not unequally yoked, unequally united. You go two different directions. What's going to happen during Holy Week? You know, why are you at church every single night of the week? Thursday night, Friday night, not to mention Wednesday or the bridegroom services. Um, so yes, it is better. I've known some women and some guys in my since I've been a priest that will meet another potential spouse and they'll say to him, "Look, I'm Orthodox. Whoever I marry has to be Orthodox.
Mm.
Or would you be willing to do that?" And like, uh, I guess I don't know what it is. And do you ever see the movie, the television show on PBS, Brideshead Revisited? It's from a book
I
by Evelyn Waugh. It's a brilliant book. In it, a man is going to marry this an heiress who's Catholic, and he's nothing. And he goes to the priest and said, like, just I have to be Catholic, right, to get me. He says, "Oh yeah." Well, what do I need to do? Well, he says, "Well, you need to study, be baptized, join the church." He says, "Well, just tell me what to say." Like, whatever you tell me, that's what I believe. And it's one of those things. It's just like he thinks he can just sort of jump through it, the hoop,
hmm
and everything will work out. You know, I believe whatever you tell me to believe, and I'll be a good Catholic. So obviously, that's not going to work.
right.
But yes, it's better for the two. Although the church does grant exceptions, you see it frequently to someone that has been that is at least a Christian in some confession that has been baptized, and then you hope over time they're going to convert. Seen it numerous times. So
Y- You know,
in one case, it,
uh,
it it took 15 years for the man to convert,
sheesh.
but when he did, it was like he got full of zeal.
Oh, he held out for a while.
He held out. Oh, definitely, and that's the proper way to look at it. He held out. He knew
hmm
it was coming, but he would not face it.
Right.
He knew it was the right thing. It just took him a heck of a long time.
hmm I've seen a lot of conversion stories like that, actually, that is usually the wife that is a Christian, and then she sort of like, the man eventually ends up becoming a Christian through the wife. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't a lot of the early converts of the church also women?
Yeah.
At least
Oh,
in the early
sure.
Roman
Well, and
Empire.
and what was marriage in the times of the early church, right? What was
hmm
marriage? The service we have now is a more formal service. Certainly didn't exist in that form in the time of St. Paul
Hmm.
or the post apostolic. They had something else. What it was, we don't have, but
Hmm.
it wasn't this. You could see what we do for an Orthodox wedding now as something almost for royalty. You know, it's a different situation. And we're kind of getting back to that now because couples will come to the church now uh, and join the church. They've been together 15 years. They got 4 or 5 kids. They never got married. They have no civil documents, but they are married for all
Yeah,
intents and
actually, I
purposes.
want to ask you about that because, like, my wife and I, for example, we've have 3 kids together. We've been together for well over 6 years, but we're not officially like married. We've never, does that does she still count as my wife? I mean, I call her my wife.
She's,
We.
marriage predates Christianity by a long
Hmm.
shot.
Hmm.
So yes, the church recognizes that. I think in California there is no common law marriage, but I would be stupid to say you guys are just living in sin,
Right, 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 right.
right? And if you're fornicating or whatever. You have children. You're
Hmm.
united in every possible way. When couples come, they get baptized. If they hadn't had a sacramental wedding, or if they had no wedding at all, let's say, or no marriage, no official, no civil, nothing, uh, I would do a marriage for them. Now, if they were married already in some way, sure, that's blessed. I think the Greek Archdiocese would require them to get married in the church, but I think that's a new approach. The Russian Church never did that. It
Hmm.
just sanctified the marriage in the baptism and the chrismation.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
I've often
it's more and
seen.
more common.
I see. I see. Um, I've often seen during Orthodox weddings where they'll place a crown over the wife and the husband. Is that the what is, I mean, is that like a symbolic thing, or is that like a newer practice, or?
What's going on there?
Hmm.
Well, the beginning of the Orthodox wedding service, the couple meets at the doors of the church, the narthex, the vestibule, and there is a brief litany, petitions, about the putting on the blessing of the rings. And the rings are blessed, and they're put on the couple. That's that's a fulfillment and a blessing of all the promises that the couple made to each other and the families have arranged. Because marriage is always a family affair, right? I mean, it wasn't just about, Bobby and Sue or Dimitri and Ekaterina. It's about a family and joining together with families. Society is held together by that, which is why, the way the marriage is now in our country, it's just a disaster because it's not marriage anymore. Um, so that takes place, and that's all a blessing of all those arrangements. But then the couple moves into the sanctuary, the nave, and they stand before the gospel and the cross, and the clergy are there, and there's these long, beautiful, just beautiful prayers. And then at one point, the couple is crowned. We ask God to crown them with glory and honor, and we sing the psalm verse, "Thou hast set upon their heads crowns of precious stones. They ask life. They ask life of thee, and thou gavest it to them." And this is the point when those crowns are the sign of their number one, their unity in Christ, their kingship. He's the king. She's the queen of their house, their home, their family. Kings and queens over their passions, over their unruly passions and impulses and thoughts. Kings and queens to have dominion to build up and sanctify. They are also, the crowns are also signs of what martyrs receive. The martyr's crown, you read about that in the book of Revelation. The martyrs have received a crown. And marriage the word martyrdom is witness, bearing testimony in our weakness to God's strength, changing, transfiguring our lives, transforming our lives through carrying our cross together through uh, uh, denying ourselves, affirming the other person. So it's a sign of white martyrdom, not martyrdom of blood, but the martyrdom of love and expecting God's grace to uphold us. It's also a crown showing that they've been chaste before they got married,
Mm.
which is not the easiest thing in the world now.
Yeah,
So probably never was. So they have this crown as a sign of the purity of their heart. They're not bringing to God like a half-eaten sandwich, so to say. It's something whole. This relationship. It's Catholic in that sense, whole, not missing anything. Uh, so yeah, that's what the crowns are about.
I
And their
see.
crowns, the prayer as the crowns come off at the end of the service, we ask Christ to keep their crowns in heaven that they will receive someday together.
I see. And the idea is that marriage would transcend our earthly life as well, right?
That's
So
right.
once we
Yes.
make it, we would also be married in
Right.
the time to come.
Every relationship we have is going to be deepened and transfigured. How? We don't know exactly, but it will be more than what it is now. Much deeper. Yeah.
I see.
Not just like
Um,
a continuation of like, hey, earthly paradise, like a Muslim paradise,
mm,
right? That just it's the same, but without bad stuff and just more of the good stuff. That's not the kingdom of heaven. We shouldn't lay over the an earthly vision of paradise because it's not like that.
mm. Um, this may be a little bit of a controversial topic. Um, what about sexual relations within marriage? So I've heard some people in the Orthodox Church say that, well, uh, it's only something that you would do with the idea that you're gonna have children, right? And that if you are doing it for your own, let's say your own pleasure, oh, it's it's more lust than it is love. So I guess my question is it sinful to have a healthy s- uh, s- uh, sexual relations with your wife?
Yeah, intimacy. Yeah,
Intimacy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's healthy. And the marriage service talks about a bed undefiled. What does that mean?
Hmm.
Well, without adultery, number one,
Hmm.
uh, uh, but also not overcome with using one another and not using, there's this, the problem with pleasure is that we always want more of it and we begin to pursue pleasure
Hmm.
rather than just to receive it, to enjoy it as we have it. Like wine makes glad the heart of man, you know. We sing in the psalm, the evening psalm at Vespers. Uh, we have wonderful things, food and friendship and intimacy. But if we begin to pursue the pleasure, then that takes precedence over everything else. So yes, there's a fine line there between lust, pursuing the pleasure, lust, and intimacy and bonding and closeness and love. It was always the teaching of the Catholic Church, whether it is now or not, I don't know, that sexual relations have to be, what's the word, directed for conception of children
Hmm.
and nothing else. Now, Orthodoxy never really did, not till recently anyway, approve of any kind of birth control, chemical stuff, not or mechanical. Never did. Yet, until like the '60s, you can trace it. Uh, but that's not to say that every act of intimacy needs to be directed towards getting pregnant.
Hmm.
That's just not a thing. I think C.S. Lewis has a pretty good handle on it in his books, The Four Loves, when he talks about eros. It's something we should kind of look at again. Maybe our listeners want to take a read on that. It's a balanced, you know, husband belongs to the wife belongs to the husband, but you don't use each other. And with our faith, with Orthodoxy, there's times when you direct your attention towards the Lord and not towards your bodily pleasures. You know, so you fast. Not only fast from food and wine, but you fast from intimacy in marriage too. Certainly before communion, the night before, the day before, and other times like Lenten seasons. So there's a it's a precious thing. So there's a barrier sort of put around it to say, keep this special, you know, it's not to be abused. But we can abuse everything, right? Food, drink, friends, talk too much, sleep, you name it. If it's possible, we will abuse it.
Mm-hmm.
So everything needs guardrails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I've heard it said that that marriage was also a gift given to man to overcome the demon of lust. I don't remember who
Yeah.
said it,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah. No, that's very well founded in the Orthodox Church.
mhm,
Yeah.
I
Better
see.
to marry than to burn, says St. Paul.
Right, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
hmm
But and it heals us of that lust because you just don't give into it every, you know, all the time. You have these times of fasting. So you have to exert a little bit of self-control. Becomes very, very good. Yeah, deny yourself. If you can't deny yourself of certain things, then how are you ever going to get over sin?
hmm so let's say for for married men that are also young that may say, well, you know, and this is something I see online a lot, and again, especially with young men, that they see this idea of having had many women as a status symbol.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I often find that when they do get married, they're not ever satisfied because they want more and more and more. So let's say for a guy that does have that background, that is now considering becoming Orthodox and, finding a wife and settling down in the proper way, how do they overcome that, that idea and that temptation?
Yeah, and especially it's worse if it's been nurtured along with pornography because that's not real life. That's fake and that's abuse, self-abuse and abuse of other people because the images that they're looking at, those people have no meaning to them, zero. It's just a thing, and that's abuse of humanity. So they have a lot of work to do. It's very hard for them to get over porn. It's a huge struggle. I'd say, and masturbation, which a lot of guys just simply cannot control. They learned when they were just hitting puberty. It's become a hardwired thing. The struggle is big. Yeah, it's hard for them. They won't have they won't have a non-dysfunctional relationship, proper intimacy with their wife, as long as all that stuff is behind them in their mind. I don't mean behind them like they're done with it. I mean, it's there, you know. Those things don't go away, which is why, if you have sex with a prostitute, you have become one with her, says St. Paul. You carry that with you. And pornography is even worse because it escalates people's idea of what sex is about. And I think it scares young women a lot, and it should. So men have been falsely trained by our society with all this. Yeah, and they'll never be priests. They just can't. You know, it's just they're just too warped in that sense.
You know what I think happened? and I can speak from my own personal group of friends as well as myself, is that we, a lot of us got introduced to that so young because of
Yeah,
the internet
yeah,
that we just never knew it was a bad thing.
right.
Everybody that was, I remember in my middle school, high school, everybody, that's just something that was understood that every single guy did. And it's not up until recently that we're getting, more voices, particularly in the Orthodox Church, that actually this is destructive. Um, so, for guy, I guess there's also a guilt factor for a lot of guys, right? So how can they
Yeah,
overcome that as well?
yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of prayer, a lot of prostrations, a lot of fasting, and just they got to work on their pride. Everybody's different, so the struggle is going to be different for each person, but it's a long road.
Hmm. Do you think that do you think that is connected to pride in some way? And if so, how?
Well, the pride in the sense of that you have to bring this shame. You have to open up to this shame. A lot of
I
guys are
see.
too proud to want to be able to do that.
Mm.
You know, they're protecting, and that shame itself, that's the bad kind of shame.
Oh,
You
I see.
cover it up, it becomes poison.
I see. I see.
Yeah,
And why do you think this is I mean, that's not to say that it doesn't plague women as well, but it seems to be the case that this is a sin that's overwhelmingly male. Um,
yeah,
is
but
there a reason for that, you think?
yeah, because guys have a stronger sexual appetite, a stronger sexual drive,
Mm,
and the images that are all over the place, movies, TVs, billboards, music, is all directed towards appealing to them, to their
mm,
sexual needs
mm-hmm.
and their impulses. Guys just, that's just the way they're wired.
Yeah.
But more and more women are becoming susceptible to it as well
Hmm.
over time. It's not to say that guys can't be healed of this. They can. They can overcome this. You read somebody like Saint Moses the Black, and how many temptations he had to endure. And he attacked it with viciousness. But his spiritual father told him, "Hey, you're not making any progress here. You're too vicious with your responding to your temptations. You need to be slower. It will be okay." But he came out of a very warped life.
But he was a thief, if I'm not mistaken,
He was
before
a
that as well,
thief, a
right?
robber, he probably, rapist, and you name it. I mean, was ugly. He was a bad dude,
Hmm.
saint. So everybody can be healed and come to holiness. Yeah. Porn is a big, big, it's a disaster.
It truly is, and it's extremely rampant and easily available.
It's so rampant. Yeah. Big
Uh,
money.
yes, yes. Well, that's the other part to that. So you mentioned pride. I think the younger generation is also plagued with this idea of having a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of women and a lot of cars. A lot of that being
Or,
driven
or,
by certain fringe groups.
right. And wanting those things if you don't have them.
Exactly. And so I think that's maybe that's another temptation that I see a lot of young men struggle with. Because, and again, maybe this is just false pride that they think that if they have these things, then I'll be valuable, I'll be X, Y, and Z. Um, what is an advice that we could offer those young men that says, actually, maybe you can and you should try to strive to have some level of success in your life, but
Yeah.
perhaps not making that the idol of your existence, right? Like,
I
again, is
think
there a
that's great
balance to
advice
that?
right there. Yeah.
Hmm.
Work hard. Labor's good. You know, put the time in, but it's not going to give you the security, the ultimate security that you're looking for.
Hmm.
And also, if the pursuit of pleasure is why you're working, you're using work for the wrong reason.
Hmm. I struggled with that a little bit, where I wasn't sure if like I on the one hand I was like, maybe wanting to be successful and wanting to, like, for example, my case, have a business, right? I felt like maybe when it ran contrary to the teachings of the church and the teachings of Christ. Does it run contrary actually, or um, how do we sort of balance that?
Well, everybody's got to serve somebody. Who you serving and all that? Are you keeping faith with God? You ever remembered the Sermon on the Mount? You know when you're off track, when you get anxious and worried about what are you going to eat, what are you going to drink, where are you going to live? Why do you worry about all those things? That's what the unbelievers worry about. The nations, the Gentiles, says Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And that's creating anxiety in you, not just worry, but anxiety. You're never at peace. Seek first the kingdom of God and all these other things. You got to work hard for sure, but it's to do what? So you can support your family, your community, your church. You can give back, you know, and treat your family, to live in something more than a hovel. Yeah, it's not wrong, but it's wrong when the goal is wrong.
What about and I know this is a difficult one, single income households. I think a lot of, unfortunately, not every family has the ability to be
Yeah,
able to do that.
yeah,
But then the children are being raised essentially by the state, or, in the best cases, family members, right?
yeah.
Um, should families strive to be a single income household if they can? And what do you think are the benefits of doing so?
What do you mean single strive to be? What do
Where,
you
like,
mean?
where only, like, for example, only the man would have
Oh,
a work
single
outside of the
income.
home. Yes, single income.
Yes. Yeah, if possible. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because who's taking care of your kids?
Right.
That's the healthiest approach. It doesn't mean that there might be times when, there's two incomes for a time. It's not an absolute all the time. It's like this is the healthiest approach from most of the time, the majority of the time. There might be circumstances where we need to be more flexible. That's okay.
Well, all the more reason to want to work harder, right?
Yeah, right. And you get home and your kids expect time from you and they're jumping all over and running around you and you're tired and you want to decompress from the job, but you cannot. You have to engage. You got to have the fun with the kids, even though what you want to do is sit on the couch and drink a beer and watch Monday Night Football. You can't let your kids see the commercials in between the plays. Not healthy. So,
Right.
because that's all they're interested in. Little kids, they don't care about the show. The commercial comes on, they're mesmerized. So
Hmm.
shut it off. You got to be with the kid.
Right.
Work hard. That's okay. Yeah,
One last question, Father. So
sure.
you're in California, if I'm not mistaken. Um, what about cannabis? A lot of guys smoke pot. Some of them say, "Hey, this is legal. It's not that bad." Up until recently, I didn't really understand how bad it was spiritually for you. What's your take on it?
Yeah, exactly what you just said. Anything that alters our mental and physical and spiritual outlook, not good. Anything chemical that does that. God will send us things, sometimes pain, you know, that will change our outlook. But this false kind of feeling and euphoria, it's not real. it's fiction. And now, I mean, all the studies are coming out to show that this is actually addicting, and the chemicals are way stronger than they used to be. And this whole thing supports a very corrupt economy, extremely corrupt, you know, with with Mexican gangs laundering Chinese money, and this is from mainstream news like Fresh Air on PBS, and it's slavery, and sex workers, and it's absolutely corrupt. But from that angle, you shouldn't touch it. But just from what it does to you, not healthy. Oh, I need it to sleep. Well, no, you don't. You need to learn how to sleep without that stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe there's some use for medical cannabis. I don't know.
I
I mean,
I
I'd be open to learning about that. So,
I agree.
yeah,
Well, Father, I mean, I wanna first and foremost thank you for your time. And thank you for
quite
sharing your
welcome.
knowledge with me and the audience. Is there anything that you would maybe like to leave the audience with today before we say our goodbyes?
No, I think we said everything needed to be said.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a
Well,
good discussion. Thank you for your questions.
thank you for your answers, Father. God bless you, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Okay, I'll see you. Hope to meet you sometime.
Thank you, Father. Bye bye.
All right, bye bye.